Welcome to Reckless Paradise, everyone. I'm your host, Marissa, and I'm here with my co-host, Dystro. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope everybody had a very good week so far. It has been a very crazy week over here. I can definitely tell you that.
I feel that. I
Oh my
feel that.
god. But we are rapidly approaching the end of July, and after this episode, we have one final episode for July of this year.
Hmm.
That's crazy, honestly. Like, it's scary to think that summer is like flying by with the blink of an eye, and it's like, because I don't want winter to come. Like, it's too fucking soon to bring back winter.
I
How
feel that.
are you feeling, Daisho? You feeling all right?
Yeah, I'm feeling alright. I'm just, I have my wrestling stuff on in the background, so.
Anyways, thank you guys for joining the episode tonight. I hope you guys enjoy. So, a bit of a how do we want to put this? A little bit of a disclaimer before we start this episode. If you are sensitive to certain topics, such as suicide, homicide, drug use, spouse abuse, depression, anxiety, please do not listen to this episode. Please go ahead and find another episode to watch because this is going to be yet another darker topic of an episode. We're kind of revisiting a topic that we visited last year, and we're talking about Chris Benoit. Now, we did a full rundown of the Chris Benoit story last year on this channel, so I advise you guys to go check that out before watching this if you want to watch this episode. Tonight's episode is about all the what ifs in the case of Chris Benoit. Now, we've been doing this what if series for a little bit now. We've done Def Leppard, we've done Eddie Guerrero with Chris Benoit tonight. Um, so basically, what if is it's basically we're gonna take all like the what ifs that could have happened in this case with Chris Benoit and talk about them. And there's quite a few if you think about it, dating back when he was in WCW and then transitioned over to WWF.
And in ECW, too.
And ECW, yeah. That I'm still fuzzy about. Like I don't really remember much of the ECW stuff.
Well, that's where I come in.
Yeah. All right. So, do you want to go in like order of which things happened first, or do you want to like go everywhere, like here, there, here, there?
I guess just go everywhere, but I didn't know if you wanted to bring up a recent passing that happened earlier
Oh
today, but
yes. So one of okay. So before we get into the episode, um, I guess she was a teaching assistant. I didn't know she was actually a teaching assistant. I thought she was an actual teacher. But um, so one of mine and one of my friends' favorite teachers or staff members at our high school, she passed away literally like not too long ago. And I just found out this evening, and I'm kind of heartbroken over it because she was the sweetest person. Though I only remember her from my junior and senior year, because those were like the 2 years I remember most vividly out of high
mhm.
school, which kind of sucks to say. She was the absolute sweetest lady, and my thoughts and prayers go out to her family, her friends, her coworkers, even.
Mhm.
I really don't know what happened. Like, I was not expecting her to go. Like, holy crap. That's like, I think that's two teachers that I've had die since I've graduated. It's only been 3 years since I graduated high school.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Like, what the hell is going on?
Don't know, to be honest with you.
But yeah, may she rest in peace. I hope that
Mhm.
she is pain free.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing into the episode. So, where shall we begin? Now, I want to save the big what if for last. And I think the big what if have to do with his death and his manner of death. So, I'm going to save that to the very end. Um, let's start with
Yeah.
this. So, Benoit, he started out in WCW, and then him, Eddie Guerrero, at the time Eddie was still alive, and Dean
Mhm.
Malenko took WWF because I guess they weren't really getting what they wanted over in WCW.
Yeah. So for a little context, for some people who do not know, um, Eddie Benoit, Perry Saturn also,
Okay.
and Dean Malenko, um, they were not getting the recognition that they so desired, because all four of them, believe it or not, were in ECW. Uh, like Perry was with John Kronos as the Eliminators, which their tag team finishes total elimination. Makes sense. Uh, Benoit and Eddie, they were in Malenko. They were like tearing it up every night in ECW and stuff. And um, you had like classic matches between Eddie and Malenko and Benoit, Benoit and Eddie. And so it's like all these four guys, like they had the raw talent, but they weren't getting past that glass ceiling.
No.
Like Eddie, Benoit, like they had the US title like maybe once, maybe twice. And Malenko, like he's had a cruiserweight title run and I think a US title run, but they never reached that glass past that glass ceiling. Only Benoit's been world champ like maybe once in WCW. That's it.
Now, here's my what if. What if WCW would have actually given them the recognition they deserved? What if they would have never went to WWF at that time? Because as everybody knows, WCW eventually got bought out by Vince McMahon himself. So,
I bought my competition.
what do you think would have happened if they would have stuck with WCW until the fall of WCW?
I think they would have been there to the very end, because like you have like like all these like fresh new talents coming in too, like you still have Bret Hart there, you have Goldberg, like Jericho, like I that's another what if episode that we should do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think like if they gave the recognition to them like then, like I don't think they would have left, because they would have been like like former world champions and all that stuff. And I mean Perry would have probably been a US champion or maybe other than that, but Benoit, Eddie, and Dean, I could see them being world champions if they had not left.
Oh, yeah. Now, like after WCW falls, after Vince buys them out, so to speak, do you think they would have, transitioned over to WWF?
I think Eddie and Benoit would have, because I think like Benoit and Eddie would have fit the mold that WWF had at the time, because I think Dean was like, I think he was just about done, and then Perry, like he goes over to like eventually, he went to WWF with Dean, Eddie, and Benoit and stuff, but like Perry, like he had like the stupidest gimmick, but it was funny. But they made fun of him for it, and he had like so many concussions before CTE was even a fucking thing.
Yeah.
So it's like it was just downhill for Perry. Like Dean, he was in this storyline with Lita and the Hardy Boys, being like, "Oh yeah, well, like I'm gonna like be this kind of, I guess, ladies' man to Lita, even though she didn't want to be with him." So it's like there was nothing for him there. The only two people that got anything out of it was Benoit and Eddie, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Now, the whole CTE concussion thing, that takes me to my next point. So, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So, when Chris Benoit had died, they took his brain for studying and stuff like that, and they found that he had CTE, and he had the brain of like an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Now, CTE is caused by repeated head blows, or like blows in general to the head. And if you guys know Chris Benoit well enough, his signature finisher move was the flying headbutt from the top rope, which he kind of inherited from the Dynamite Kid.
Hmm.
Now, here's the question. What if he would have changed that? What if he would have stopped doing the flying headbutt? What if he would have never had CTE, or less CTE, to the point where it didn't damage his brain completely?
Like I think the first part of that. I think if he didn't do the flying headbutt, I think his back wouldn't have been fucked up as it was, because it fucked up Dynamite's kids back up so much that it like almost kind of like paralyzed him
Yeah.
because he did it so much. Um, I think like he could have done something else other than a flying headbutt. I think like he could have maybe just done like a headbutt like on the mat to the person. That would have been maybe way more effective. Um, but I mean, like the cripple crossface and stuff. That was like one of his finishing maneuvers, and all that stuff too. Like in the sharpshooter. Um, I think like if he just removed that move from his repertoire, like I think he would have still been like, I guess, still be capable of doing more, I guess. Um, the CTE thing, man, it's like it man, it just boggles my mind. But then like back then, you had unprotected chair shots,
Yeah.
and case in point is like Rock and Mankind.
Oh yeah.
So it's just it's
It
just the
just
case. It's just the case of what if, like I said, like you
it
said.
just makes you wonder, would Chris still be here? Like, if he didn't have all that CTE, because there's studies showing that that is like one contributing factor to his death, and like
Hmm.
why everything happened the way it did. Because when you have CTE, your whole personality changes. Like, you literally change into a different person. Like, you get severe mood swings, you get depressed, you get anxiety, you get paranoia, you get really angry all the time. It's scary, that freaking repetitive blows to the head can change you into a completely different person. Like, that's
Hmm.
insane.
Yeah. Um. But I mean, it's like nowadays, like they're saying like don't do unprotected chair shots because CT and stuff is that. Like I wish they would have done that sooner.
Way sooner. Yeah.
Like, because Chris would have been like the first case of that. I'd be like, okay, yeah, so I'm gonna take some time off, get my head scanned, just see what the hell's going on. But yeah, it's like that's just crazy.
It is.
Just-
So this brings me to another point. So we're gonna go back a little bit, back in time. So this is when, of course, Kevin Sullivan was a booker, and
oh boy.
was this WCW?
Yes, it
Okay, I just want to
was.
fact check myself. So back in WCW, of course, Kevin Sullivan was a booker in addition to being a wrestler. At this
Mhm.
time, he was with a woman who everybody knows as Nancy Benoit. Um, he was with her both in the ring and actually, literally, relationship wise too. They were actually married. Um, and the joke always goes, Kevin Sullivan booked his own divorce. He booked Chris Benoit to work with Woman, and Woman was going to be like, what would you call it, like a manager?
His managers, but like on the road, like they were supposed to be like together at all times,
Yeah.
like being seen together, sort of thing.
And what that ended up leading to is literally Chris Benoit and Nancy becoming an actual in real life thing. So in that kind of retrospect, it kind of seems like Kevin Sullivan booked his own divorce.
Yeah,
So
it's
here's a
like
what if. What if Kevin Sullivan would have never booked him that way? What if he would have never booked Chris Benoit into that retro aspect?
that's a good one, to be honest with you.
It just makes you wonder, where would Chris be, without Woman? Like, what would he have been doing in WCW?
I think like, man, that's a good question though. I think Benoit was still maybe end up seeing Nancy down the line, because I think at some point, like Nancy and Kevin, like they were gonna be eventually like divorced at some point, because
Yeah,
it's like Nancy's probably gonna be like, like, okay, Kevin, like this is enough. Like you're booking yourself into this rabbit hole that you're almost injuring one of your top stars in the company,
Yeah.
and then it's like I could just see be like you know what, we're done, we're through, and then like maybe a few months down the line, like when the storyline is finished or something, maybe Nancy would be like, hey, like I'm sorry about what Kevin did to you and all that stuff. Like let me make it up to you and all that stuff, and then maybe do that. It's not like boom, like okay, you two are an item, and then oh crap, well I guess I have to put my own divorce now. Like it's just that's not good.
The thing is, from the Dark Side of the Ring documentary that I watched, from what I remember, Nancy and Kevin had a lot of arguments behind the scenes. When in real life, there was a
Mhm,
few physical altercations in the house. There was just a lot of tension because Nancy wanted to focus on her career, and that kind of put a little bit of a strain on the relationship. Like she wasn't around him as often.
mhm.
She wanted to focus on her career and set her career off. And I don't blame her. Like she's independent. Like let her do what she wants. But I can definitely see how it would put a strain on the relationship. Hence leading to her going with Chris. But once again, it's like, what if they would have never met? Like what if the storyline would have never happened?
I think I think the physical and mental toll on Benoit would have been severed. Like
Yeah.
it would have just not been there. Like Kevin would have gone on to do like maybe great booking for Chris. Just be like, hey, here's some booking techniques I'm gonna show you and all that stuff, and I'm gonna try to treat you fairly.
All right, so we're gonna fast forward again back to around, I'm believing it's 2004. So at this time, we're talking WrestleMania 20. At the previous pay per view, though, at what was it, No Way Out?
Yes, no way out.
No Way Out '04, Eddie Guerrero had defeated Brock Lesnar for the WWE title,
Hmm.
and he finally reached the top of his game. He was on top of the ladder. And then you fast forward to Mania 20, Chris Benoit, which everybody knows that's Eddie's best friend. Chris Benoit defeated Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the first ever triple threat main event match for the World Heavyweight title. Thus, meaning Chris Benoit also made it to the top of the game. They reached that glass that you were talking about earlier. And
Hmm.
it was just that freaking shattering moment, like that awesome moment when Eddie and Chris hugged in the middle of the ring.
Hmm.
It was just absolutely just heartwarming. Now, here's the what if. What if they would have never put the World Heavyweight Championship on Chris in 2004? What if they would have waited a bit further down the line, like '05 or '06 or something?
Oh man, that would have been like it's like kind of like the Daniel Bryan syndrome that would have happened.
Yeah.
It's like I think I think here's my thing. It's like I think Benoit winning over Triple H and Shawn was a good call. That was a good call, and they striked when the iron was hot on Benoit. It's kind of like I said, like the Daniel Bryan syndrome. Like if you had waited and waited and waited, it's like kind of been like okay, like when are we gonna have Benoit as champion? And like maybe I think maybe a '05, maybe '06 is a good choice to be honest with you. Because like '05 was like getting kind of hot, and then '06 was getting hotter. Um, but I don't know what would you think?
Well, I was thinking in this way: would Chris have gotten dissatisfied with? Would he have went to the rival company at this time, which was, you guessed it, TNA? Do you think he would have went there? Because there were times where Chris was getting a little dissatisfied with the company. On the Dark Side of the Ring documentary I watched.
Mhm.
Um, so it just makes you wonder: would he have went to TNA? Never got the title in '04. Would he have gotten a little bit impatient and something bigger?
I think he would have, to be honest with you. That would have been a huge get for TNA
Yeah.
because I think it was like around like 05, 06, like Kurt Angle was about to leave the company too.
Perk
Like
Angle.
he was getting dissatisfied with the company in 06. So like could you imagine if Angle, Benoit, and I think well Christian would probably left that like around 05. So those three in TNA together, like
Oh boy.
you have amazing matches on the weekly basis and a pay-per-view basis. So I think Benoit leaving to go to TNA, that would have been pretty good for his career.
Yeah, like you
It
could have
would have
fucking legendary matches with like wow, AJ Styles, Abyss,
it,
Samoa Joe,
yeah,
the
like
Pillars.
yeah, like you name it, they would have done it.
They
Like,
would have tore the house down.
oh yeah, they would have sold T-shirts, DVDs, like imagine them in the video game and all that stuff. Like, could you imagine? My
Oh wow,
God.
that would have been
uh,
huge.
oh yeah, that would have been super huge.
Oh
Man.
boy. So we're gonna skip ahead to 05. So 05 came around. Unfortunately, tragedy struck, within the pro wrestling business. Unfortunately, on November 13th of 2005, we ended up losing Hero at the very young age of 38 years old due to heart failure. Now, as everybody knows, this literally train wrecked Benoit. Like, this was a huge turning point in Chris Benoit's life in more ways than one. He was definitely not the same person that everybody knew before Eddie's passing. Um, he got really quiet. He was more to himself. He didn't want to be around anybody, not even around his family. Tensions were high in the Benoit household as well. Um, it just makes you wonder. Like, this is a pretty big question. What if Eddie would have never passed?
I think Benoit would have not gone down that downward spiral.
Yeah, I think he would still be here.
Yeah. Like it's kind of like a clear cut dry sort of answer because it's kind of like, oh well, like if Eddie was here, it's like Benoit would have done the things he's done. It's like yeah, that's a clear cut dry answer, but like there's more to that answer. Like Eddie would have still been around, yes. Like and then Benoit was not gone mad. He was not gone crazy. Like and we'll get to that in like a little bit, but like it's crazy that he was quiet, he was distant, he was cold to himself and his entire family and the Guerrero family kind of like you said, he was just to himself, like he just didn't talk to anybody. Like that's not good. And, like but like you said, that was his best friend, that was his compadre, that was like his amigo, as Eddie would put it. But
Yeah.
it's
Like, once
just
Eddie died, he, like I said, he got really, really reserved. He really stuck to himself, didn't want to be around anybody. He started writing in a journal in hopes that, he was connecting with Eddie from up above. It was just really, really tormenting with him that he had passed. It was like as if he had lost a spouse. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, I remember Chris Jericho saying on Dark Side of the Ring that when they showed up for the funeral, like Chris Benoit gave him the most saddest freaking hug that Jericho felt. It literally left a blotch of tears that literally his jacket into the shirt. Like, he was wearing a jacket and then a shirt over his suit. It literally soaked through the shirt. Like, it was just the most desperate, saddest thing that Jericho had ever experienced.
hmm so man, it's like it's just crazy, It's just at a young age too. Like he still had like lots to give to the business, and then he was just
Yeah,
gone, like like that.
it's just fucking
Oh.
crazy. Now, this leads into my next what if right off the fly. Um, what if Chris would have got help? What if Chris Benoit would have been like, okay, I realized that I'm going down the wrong fucking road. Like, I'm literally driving myself mad. I can't sleep. Can't wrestle without thinking about Eddie. Like, I don't even want to be around people. Like, something's wrong. Like, what if he would have took the initiative to get help, to seek mental help?
I think he would have been, better off. And this is for anybody that's going through all this stuff, like what we're talking about and all that stuff too. Like, seek help. Like, there's people out there that do love you,
And care, yeah.
and if you do not get help, it's like you're gonna be driving yourself mad, like Chris did,
Yeah.
and it's like it's not healthy. It's very not healthy. Um, I could say that from my perspective because I've have anxiety and all that stuff, and I do get anxiety attacks sometimes. I mean, we all do.
Yeah.
But if you have a therapist or somebody that's outside the family that you can go talk to that person. If it's like
Yes.
5 minutes, it's somebody that you could talk to, and they will help you in any way, shape, or form that they can.
It could change your life. It really could.
Yeah, it's. I think if Chris did get help, I think he would have still been in a better mental space.
Oh, yeah. I think he still would have been here. He would have found ways to cope with
Hmm.
losing his best friend. Because
Hmm.
there are ways to cope with losing somebody. Like, I've lost a few people in life. I've lost a few people,
Hmm.
including my grandfather back in 2019. I had to cope with that. It was
Hmm.
hard. And sometimes it's hard. Some days are harder than others, but it's not, like, life goes on. You have to carry on because that's what they would want you to do.
Hmm.
And I really wish Chris would have thought like that rather than kind of like digging himself into a hole.
Yeah.
It's like a tragedy, like how this all went down. Like once Eddie died, like he was just not the same at all. Like people were getting concerned about him. Like his family and friends were getting very concerned. It's just like why did nobody like speak up? You know, like when Eddie was not doing well, when Eddie was like going into the drug addiction, I think it was Jr. He spoke up.
Hmm.
Him and Dean Malenko and stuff, they spoke up, and Eddie ended up getting released, of course, but he got the help he needed. Why did nobody do that for Chris? Like, that's what I'm questioning about. Like, why did nobody like go tell officials like, hey, I think Chris is like struggling. Like, why don't we give him some help? Like, why didn't anybody do that? Like, why didn't his family do that?
I really don't know, to be honest with you.
Like, I think that's the one thing that really baffles me. It's like, why did nobody do that?
It's like they did that with like Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton and stuff when they got into trouble, but it's like they didn't do that for Chris. It's like, okay, like they're playing like not devil's advocate, but they're playing favorites with some people.
Yeah, like it's
It's
just a little weird.
Yeah, but it's like like we said, like if Chris did get help, like I think, like I said, like he would have been in a better mental space. The whole family thing, like I think he would have been open up a little bit more and try to talk to them again. But like if Chris like Chris, like he was talking about CTE and all that stuff too, like he was studying like all that stuff, so like could probably say to Chris, be like, hey, like like I understand what you're going through. Let me help you, and like I'll try to find the help for you. Or like like JR, or maybe Michael Cole. You never fucking know. Like it's like Chris wasn't gonna go up to the boss, but like, hey, dude, like, hey, I gotta take some few days off, like because I'm not here mentally. Like, can you help me find a therapist or something? I think Vince would have been like, yeah, like sure, like like I'll help you find the person that you need to help. Just take your time. You know, come back when you're ready. And I think it would have been better off for Chris.
Yeah. So this takes me into my final question of the night. So I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of context here. So this is a bit of a graphical kind of warning. So please be advised that this is kind of where things get a little dark. So It all begins on the day of Friday, the 22nd of June in 2007. So it seems like Chris and Nancy had a bit of an altercation in the house. Um, Unfortunately, Chris ended up snapping. He ended up snapping pretty fucking bad. Uh, he killed Nancy in the bonus room of their house, which at the time was being used as an office. According to the report, her limbs were found bound prior to her death, with her arms being restrained with coaxial cables, and her feet were also being duct taped together. A balled up combination of a tube sock and tape was also found in the kitchen trash and appeared to be soaked in dry blood, which led to police to believe that it was being used as a makeshift gag for her death. Her body was found wrapped in a blanket, and a copy of a Bible was left by her body. Injuries also indicated that Benoit had pressed a knee back while pulling on a cord around her neck, causing strangulation. So Nancy had passed away on the this was on a Friday. He literally went to sleep that same night with Nancy in the house, deceased. So the following day, on Saturday, June 23rd of 2007, Chris's third child, and what does it say? Yes, it's Chris's third child, Daniel, ended up getting killed as well. Unfortunately, he was suffocated in his bedroom, and also a copy of the Bible was left by his body. He had internal injuries to his throat area, showing no bruises. Daniel's exact time of death is still unknown. Reports determined that Daniel was sedated with Xanax and likely unconscious when he was killed. Wow. So this was the 23rd. This was one day after Nancy was killed. Chris went to bed the same night with two bodies, literally, in the house. Like, that is fucking insane. So the next day, Chris at around, give or take 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. Actually, excuse me, this was actually the same day. Okay, I am reading this completely wrong. I don't have my glasses right now, so don't mind me. At 3:30 the same day, I should say, uh, fellow wrestler and close friend of his, Chavo Guerrero, received a voicemail message from Chris Benoit's phone stating that both Nancy and Daniel had food poisoning and they'd be late for that night's house show over in Texas. Guerrero called Benoit back and found that Benoit sounded tired and groggy as he confirmed everything he had said in his voice message. Guerrero, who was concerned about Benoit's demeanor, called him back about 12 minutes later. Benoit did not answer the call, and Guerrero left a message asking Benoit to call back. Let's see here. So, let's see. The next day, June 24th, 2007, 5 text messages were sent to coworkers between 3:51 in the morning and 3:58 in the morning using both Chris and Nancy Benoit's cell phones. 4 of them were the Benoit's address, and the 5th stating that the family's dogs were in the enclosed pool area, and also noted that the garage side door had been left open. Guerrero and referee Scott Armstrong were 2 of the recipients of these text messages. Guerrero was then woken up by the text and then went back to sleep, telling himself he was picking Benoit up at the Houston airport in a few hours. Benoit failed to show at the Houston airport on that flight that arrived in the morning. Late Sunday morning, Benoit called WWE's Town Relations office stating that his son was vomiting and that he and Nancy were at the hospital with him. He had also stated he'd be taking a later flight, scheduled to face CM Punk that night for the vacant ECW World Championship at Vengeance Night of Champions. Benoit, however, failed to appear for that pay-per-view event in Houston. So, it looks like that same night, Chris Benoit ended up committing suicide. Benoit used a weight machine cord to hang himself by creating a noose from the end of the cord on a pull-down machine from which the bar had been removed. Benoit then released the weights, causing his strangulation. Officer Ballard, I believe he was he's the district. Ballard said that Chris Benoit was found hanging from the pulley cable. So this all went down in a matter of 3 days. This was literally over a damn June weekend, a nice summer June weekend, and this all happened. Absolutely bone chilling.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Just reliving
it's
that, making me.
absolutely crazy, to be honest.
Yeah,
So,
because I was gonna say, like, because I remember that Vince Night Champions show, because that's when I think John Morrison faced Punk for the title that night.
Yeah, they replaced him with Morrison.
It's so mind-boggling to just hear that.
It is. It really is. And this takes me to my final question of the evening. What would have never snapped? Like, what if he would have never done all this?
I think Nancy and their son, like they would have still been here alive today.
Like, do you think Nancy would have gotten a divorce from Chris?
I believe she would, because she didn't feel, I guess, like in my perspective, I don't think she would have felt safe in the house. She would have taken the kids and left.
Yeah.
And yes, like I know Chris would have probably been suffering a mental breakdown, but it's like it's just crazy that he took 2 lives that were innocent in all this shit,
Yeah.
and then he decided to take his own because I guess he couldn't just bear the pain and anguish that he did to Nancy and their kid. Like that's just fucking crazy.
And now, David, the other son of Chris Benoit from a previous marriage, he's still with us. And now he's kind of getting like pushed aside, like nobody wants anything to do with it because of what his father did. And that's not fair to him because he didn't do anything. He wasn't even at the scene when it happened. Like, he didn't do anything. He was living with his, like, blood mother, like his actual mother.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, why punish him? He didn't do a damn thing. Like, sure, he looks like Chris. I'm not gonna lie, he looks like Chris.
Mm-hmm.
But why? Like, why do that to him? He has a whole life ahead of him. Like, if he wants to be a wrestler, let him.
And it's like it's funny because like the Benoit name was on the WWE blacklist for the longest time,
Yep.
and that's not fair. That's not fair to him. That's not
It's not
fair.
fair to him, and it's not fair to Nate, who should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Under
and
woman. Like,
yes,
she should be there as woman.
because she was like one of the top female managers of all time, like
Yeah.
not far none. Like she's managed like a lot of people, especially Benoit, like Kevin Sullivan. So I think she even managed Doom in WCW, which
Wow.
is like it's the like they were like the first, like, well, not first, but all black like tag team in WCW that won tag team go, or no, I'm sorry, that's completely wrong. It was Ron Simmons and I can't remember his partner's name, but help me out in the comments. But like she managed them, and like she led them to tag team gold. And like, yeah, like like not a lot of people love her, but it's like don't hate on her managerial skills.
Yeah, like she had her own career, and for that, I think she should be in the Hall of Fame as woman. Like, it doesn't have to be under the name Nancy Benoit. It could be under the name woman
Woman.
because that was her gimmick, that was her persona.
Hmm.
And it's
And
so
it's like,
unfair.
yeah, it's really unfair. I know like a lot of people are probably saying like Benoit should be in the Hall of Fame. It's kind of like heads or tails on that, because it's just like on one hand, it's like, yeah, you have all that stuff that went down over that weekend, but on the other side of that coin, it's like you can't not. It's like you cannot like list all the accomplishments that he's done in the business. He's got all those accolades and stuff, and I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Yes, I know that's a controversial opinion, but it's like he should. Yes, like blacklist him after the Hall of Fame. I don't give a shit, but it's like at least like give him a recognition in the Hall of Fame.
I personally, okay, this is kind of where I differ. After watching like that documentary so many times, it's kind of got me thinking, no, Jim Ross is right. JR is right. He should not be in the Hall of Fame. Yes, he's done a lot in the wrestling business. He's done a shit ton of achievements and stuff like that. But when you think of Chris Benoit, you can't help but to not think of what happened. Like that's like the number one thing that comes to mind with everybody when you think of Chris. And it's like, are we glorifying a murder? A murderer? Like that's
It's
kind of what happens. Like WWE face so much backlash if they did that. Like that's the thing. Like that's why I personally feel like for the sake of the drama and the sake of the it should not happen because it will cause an uproar on social media and on WWE and it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be so bad. It's gonna be like that war that happened after All Out last year. Like it would be like even
oh god.
higher. It would be that fire would be so high. It would be burning for years. And I just
Well,
do not think, for the sake of the drama, it would not be a good idea at all.
I mean, I get that, but it's like after a while, like they should just not like say like okay, well like but I think like maybe a few years maybe down the line or something. But I yes, like I know like the whole thing is still gonna be ingrained in people's minds, but it's like it's just sad that the Benoit name is so
Tarnished.
tarnished and like you said, the only surviving son of the Benoit name is getting so much shit, even though he's not done anything yet.
Like, he has every right to defend his father. Like, that's his dad, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
I
his dad.
completely get that.
Yeah,
Like, that's
and
because, like, you know, he was young when it happened. Like, give him a fucking
yeah,
break. Like, he's trying to start his life and, you know, like, keep going.
and I thought it was kind of a sweet kind of bitter moment on AEW programming. Like he was front row, and after Punk's match with Starks, like he went up to him and hugged him and gave him a little like kiss on the cheek and all that stuff like like
I
hey
saw
good.
that.
And I was like that was kind of cool. Like I love that he did that for him. Just being like hey, I'm glad you're here, kid. Just being like I'm glad you're here with us still.
Yeah. I
But
feel like to this day, I still say that I'm hoping David will become a wrestler. I'd love to see him in the ring carrying on what was
Benoit name.
good of Chris Benoit's legacy, we should say.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, woman. I really hope that she gets put in the Hall of Fame. She deserves it, honestly. And who knows,
Yeah,
maybe David will be a future Hall of Famer if he joins wrestling. Like, that'd be awesome to see.
I mean the only time will tell at this
Only
point.
time will tell. So that, ladies and gentlemen, or Gaties and Lettleman, I don't know. Um, that, my friends, was the What If Chris Benoit edition episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this was a very, very touchy kind of subject, but I'm glad we got through it. It felt really good to talk about it. Because I do like revisiting that story from time to time. It's a story that I have been looking into since I was a little kid. Because I didn't really know who Chris Benoit was. Like, my dad briefly mentioned him to me, like, when I was a little bit younger. So I was like, who the hell is Chris Benoit? So I looked it up. I was like, oh, he was from my generation of wrestling. And then I looked deeper. It's like, oh. And I found a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube when I was a kid, and I got really into it. And here I am talking about it, like years later. Um, so yeah, that was kind of fun. I'm glad we got to do this episode. So, ladies and gentlemen, our last episode of this month, we are ending on the debate hour. We have not done a debate hour in a very long time, and that's because my fault. I ran out of ideas, but I've got some now. Since we've done Def Leppard and stuff, we are gonna go ahead and compare old Def Leppard to new Def Leppard. Now, I did mention this already in the last episode that we did. What I mean by that, old Def Leppard meaning 1980 from the debut album Onto the Night all the way up to 1993 with Retroactive, which was a compilation album of B-sides and unreleased tracks and some covers too, I believe they did. So that's old Def Leppard. And then new Def Leppard, or modern day Def Leppard, as some people may refer to, This would be from 1994 going into 95, obviously, with the Greatest Hits Vault album, going into Slang with 96, and then all the way up to now, which would be, if we're talking studio albums, Diamond Star Halos from last year, and albums in general, Gigantic Symphonies from this year. So we're going to talk about both eras of Def Leppard, and we're going to see what we preferred more, some pros and cons from each side. I've got a lot to talk about. So I'm ready. I'm sure you're ready. I'm sure everybody else is ready. So that's gonna be what wraps up July for you guys. So be sure to tune in this Sunday. It's gonna be a really good episode. And Dystro, you have our song for tonight?
Yeah, yes I do. Yes I do. So recently we just finished up our Foo Fighters
Foo
pilgrimage.
Fighters.
Foo Fighters. And I kind of want to go back to the Waste and Light album.
Yes.
And I think I'm gonna go with Walk. I think
That's
again.
actually really fitting. That's pretty fitting.
I think that's a pretty good song to fit for this kind of like
Episode, yeah.
episode.
End it on a good light. Like, we're gonna end it on a good note, with a good
song. Like it's kind of hard to put into words, but it's like I'm trying not to get kind of emotional about the whole situation. So
it's a bittersweet way to end it. Let's just put it that way.
yeah,
It's like a good way to end this episode. Like, get up, go take a walk, like, move on. Like, life goes on, and nothing's worth dwelling over. And it's always good to remember that.
Mhm.
So, Walk by the Foo Fighters. That is tonight's song of the night from Wasting Light. I feel like we've really been hooked on that album lately.
Yeah, I just played a few songs before I started recording, so
That reminds me, fucking beginning of August. Like, August, we're going to be doing all the Foo Fighters stuff. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Anyways, so if you guys want to hear tonight's song of the night by the Foo Fighters, please be sure to click on the very top right-hand corner of our episode at the end. There will be a link that pops up. There is a music video. We have seen it before. It's very good. So go ahead and go watch it. Go give it some likes. Have some laughs. Maybe a pretty funny video. All right. So if you we greatly appreciate your support. Be sure to go ahead and follow us on social media by clicking on our link in the description below, which will take you to Linktree. We have Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter changed its name to X. So I have to say X now, which is really weird for me to say because every time I say X, I think of Def Leppard.
I just still say Twitter.
I'm just going to say X from now on. So go follow. It's very important you do that because that's where we post updates on the show in case we can't upload, in case something goes wrong. We've had that happen once this year. So it's very important to follow us there. And also keep up to date on our YouTube community little section. One of us will post as well if something goes wrong. Dystro's YouTube channel is there as well. He posts weekly gaming content for everybody. He does GTA and 2K23. We're going to be playing Wreckfest next week, so I'm very excited to try that out. What are you at for subscribers at this time?
823.
Okay, so you moved up a little bit. It's all right. We're going to try to get you to 900 by the end of summer, which end of summer would technically be like September 20th, September 21st. Like, we're around the end of September, so we'll just say end of September. So let's get him to 900 subscribers, please. Go subscribe to him. Go give him some love. Share his stuff around. And once again, take a listen to tonight's song of the night, Walk by the Foo Fighters. And that's it. One episode to go for July, guys. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you guys this Sunday. Peace.
Peace.